Go for it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Drifter's Atlas. Presents Ascension. This is as you've known, this is a world building stream that we are working on. What we are calling Ascension. We hope to have a name for the world here in the next couple of episodes, or maybe tonight. We are going to be working on the Pirate Kingdoms today. We have Katherine back. Everybody, welcome Katherine again.
Hello.
Of course, there's myself. I'm Thomas. I'm here. I'm going to be working on Legend Keeper, you see up in the top left corner. And we have Zac, who is working on the Wonder Draft in the top right corner.
Hello.
So last week we talked a little bit about it. On Saturday we did an impromptu stream, and we talked about what the Ascension means and some of that pantheon, and sort of fleshed some of that out on stream. You're going to be able to catch that. We are pretty much official. We're just waiting on uploading some of these onto YouTube, right, Zac?
Yep. We got verified this afternoon, so we should be able to go live on YouTube with all these videos. Not live, but we should be able to post all these videos onto YouTube, hopefully in the next couple days.
Wonderful. And if you do want to catch up before then, all of our product is on Twitch. So we have all of the back episodes on Twitch. All you have to do is log into your Twitch account and then go to the Drifter's Atlas, and you can see everything that we've recorded so far. We have some big news for next week, and I'm going to let Zac take that over.
Yeah. So next week we are going to be dropping the first of our actual play streams on the channel. We're going to be doing a run through of Dungeon, which is a product of mine, and we'll be doing it every other Monday starting the 27th. It's going to be at 9 o'clock Central, so the same time as what we're doing this right here, and it's going to go till about 12:30. We've got a good group of players, and we're going to have, I think it's going to be a really crazy team of weirdos at this point, so we'll see what happens. But
you can say that again.
Yeah.
And that's not gonna change our podcast here, or not our podcast, but our stream here. Our stream here is going to continue on every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. So we're just trying to add some content for everybody who is watching.
Yep.
So.
It's basically we want to be getting as much content out as we can to you guys that fits the idea of the channel, which is, unique created worlds. And so we had this dungeon product ready to go, so we decided to go ahead and do a stream there. And we have talks about doing other streams at other nights later this year. So hopefully by fall we've got maybe 2 or 3 streams for you, plus the world building. Hey, we got David in the chat.
Awesome.
Hey.
Welcome, David. Welcome, David. We missed you last week. I know you were here for a little bit, and we worked on some of that Pantheon, and then we lost you for a while, and I didn't know if you got kidnapped or what happened.
Good job being alive.
No, I know it kept booting you. I know we've talked since then, but it was, of course, we knew you were excited about the product, and you were talking with us for a while until about 10 o'clock Central Time, and then it was just poof, David's gone. So, what else? Anything new other than Dungeons, Zac?
Let's see. So we're gonna be still doing our impromptu streams. Typically it's been every weekend or every other weekend. We're gonna be doing streams. Keep an eye on Saturday nights, and that's been our regular time so far. Other than that, I think we're working on Ascension, which is the product we're calling this stream. So on the back end, we've got some stuff going on there, doing some world building, doing some adventure writing, things like that. So we'll be excited to share some more stuff in that way with you in the coming weeks.
And I want to congratulate David Barentine on his successful Kickstarter that just ended.
Yes.
He just put out a adventure from levels 1 to level 20, and it blew our minds on how well that went. and not saying anything bad about what he did, but I think we were all excited for what that got to.
Yeah.
And there's going to be another Kickstarter here this spring summer, right? Of the players that you unlocked, right, Zach?
Yeah, whenever we announce it.
Ooh.
It's all right.
Ooh.
So,
I'm sorry.
you're good.
I hope I didn't step on any toes there.
No, I think
just excited for our friend.
yeah.
Player friendly book, he says.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, as of yet unannounced date. That's the right way of saying that.
Wonderful.
So it's not a secret. So
I didn't want to lock anything down.
There you go.
I just said spring, summer, fall, sometime. So
Yeah.
take my word for it. I had nothing to do with it.
Absolutely.
I will open my mouth and take my foot out.
No, it's completely fine. I'm like we want the word out, so it's just hadn't gotten out yet. I think we told people, David. We'll get to the actual world building here in a minute, but I think what we told people was it's coming, but we didn't say when or how. So
yeah, that's perfect.
Yep, there you go. Perfect.
Awesome. I was filling Katherine in about where we were right before we went live. Last week, 2 weeks ago, with Katherine, we talked about the Pirate Kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about these 8 pirate lords who are sort of in charge of this area. You see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And we decided that there might be a dragon, or there is a dragon, taking sort of keeping an eye on all these pirate kingdoms. That's collecting a tithe of taxes. So that's where we're probably going to jump back into today, because we're blessed to have Katherine in here today. So we're going to take all her great ideas here that we started 2 weeks ago. We will get back to the crater. We talked with Jonathan last week about the crater, but we're going to try to flesh out some of this pirate kingdom.
Yep.
Sweet.
I've got us zoomed in there so we can have a look at. And then I'll zoom out a little bit on this map so we can kind of get some context of where it is, but and then I can play around in Wonder Draft, but that'll give us some idea right there.
Okay.
Lovely. All right, let me pull up Wonder Draft. So Katherine, we know that where we were going to start is right here in this little neck of the woods. Right next to this stronghold fortress, there is a small town. And I think that's about as far as we got with knowing anything about that. So, but I think that's where we want to go back to, because this is going to be, without giving too much of a spoiler away, this is where we kind of want to start at least one of the adventures for this world, is right here in the Pirate Kingdoms, and specifically right here in this little burg.
We did talk a little bit about during my charity run a couple weeks ago. We did talk a little bit about what might be in this town. So we talked about an Undine or a Water Genasi lord who was working. So this is a more open city, because we wanted a city where people are able to start characters and start their adventure, and you don't want to feel like you're stuck picking certain characters to start with your party.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So since this is more closer to the border kingdoms, we'll use, or the northern border. I guess we can't use border kingdoms because of everything with Forgotten Realms, but the northern kingdoms, we said that there's probably some more open ability to walk with whatever race you might be.
Mm-hmm.
We also decided that maybe that this town, so we talked about Genasi being a huge theme here in the Pirate Kingdoms, and which is sort of cool because you can play with all the different sort of the elemental Genasi, so you can play with fire and water and earth and wind, or earth and air. And we also were talking about like what other kind of races might be in this city prevalent, and we thought that maybe gnomes was a good idea. Because they're sort of that same sort of magic-y, slightly magic for everybody kind of race.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question since we're diving into the races right now. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot, and we can get David's opinion and anyone else in chat. But how do we feel? Sometimes people say that gnomes and halflings are redundant. How do we feel about that for this world? Do we feel like we need both? Um, what's our thoughts?
I
I
uh,
don't
Go ahead, Catherine.
I don't know about need necessarily, but I think you could flavor the halflings different enough than the gnomes that it would be all right. Like maybe they don't live in the same regions, but they're both present somewhere.
Yeah, David says, can we make them more different? Um, so I think that if that could tie into the idea of same region or different regions too, right? Like
Hmm.
if they don't if they don't cross cultures that much, then then that'll make them more distinctive. It's kind of like halflings and gnomes in Eberron, right? Where Eberron halflings are like businessmen and ride dragons or ride dinosaurs and yada yada yada. They're not the same as gnomes.
Hmm. Maybe one of them could have like maybe one of the two races could have a very close tie to the crystals somehow. Like I don't know, guardians, or they when they're in the presence of one, it like does something different to them than
Hmm.
the others. Or um, I mean, my mind jumps toward guardians, like keepers of them, kind of a thing. But then that could complicate some of the other dynamics you already have going for those. Mm.
David is saying stuff like if you made gnomes further into their fey side, so they're like fey creatures
Ooh,
in the world. Yeah.
that sounds fun.
Like red caps.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly like that. We want a whole race of
Uh
red
huh. Uh huh.
caps in our world.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Ooh,
Much fun.
our I thought our world was trying to be trying to be better than that.
Yes, less murdery. So,
But we do want our players. We don't want a heritage of stomping them completely out. Because if our players like to play one or the other, we don't want to discourage. Um, we don't want to discourage the fact that they like halflings or they like gnomes.
mhm.
Right.
I like the
Because I
idea. I like the idea. I like the idea of steering into. You, I'm trying to think of well, like tieflings are the best example in fifth edition right now for something that's like planar touched, right? Like
Mhm.
they're tied to the infernal or the abyss, but the um, the gnomes could be in the same way very much tied to the Fae, where they can be anything. They can
Mhm.
be everything from a barbarian to a fighter to a paladin to a warlock, but they carry that ancestry with them.
I guess my question then would be: do we have Eladrin in this world? Um, or if we do, how do we um, I mean, I know that they are tied to specific seasons and stuff, but
Hmm.
I guess we could have the gnomes be a little bit more like time weird, or attuned into, or um, I don't know, some other aspect of having closer ties to a Feywild type stuff.
Hmm. Hmm. Um,
Sorry, I have all these tables for like shops and stuff. I didn't think about races very
oh,
much.
you're all right. You're all
You're
right.
good. I think most of this is sort of like, oh, we're talking about this today, so here it goes.
Mm,
Cool,
and
awesome.
We talked it last week about some of the Pantheon things, and Zach and I were not ready for that at all. And we ended up having like a 5 hour call after the stream went down,
Oh man. I mean,
which was good,
awesome. Yeah, inspiration.
but it was not what we were expecting, and we've decided that it's time that we go with. sort of whatever gets brought up on stream, we sort of run with that and see if we can't take advantage of that while we have it.
Cool.
So David is suggesting as an idea, and I think this is like a more traditional, we'll call it maybe, interpretation of gnomes is that they're basically small elves, right? Um, and he's suggesting that some sort of that mutation effect happened as a result of the crater. What I like about that, right, is that almost certainly then the gnomes are only on this continent. They are not in the rest of the world, or at
Oh,
least not in
interesting.
number, right? Because the
Yeah.
crater isn't going to have as much of an effect 500 or 2,000 miles away.
Right. That's cool.
Oh, and he's saying the Eladrin might be an effect of the crater. He was thinking about the crater might be the Eladrin. Um,
Could be
made of
both.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
One of the things that we'd have to think about there, right, is the different effects that we want this mutagen to have. Is it a chaos mutagen where the effects are vast and diverse in their occurrence, or is it something to where the mutagen creates a certain type of thing, right? Um, um, that being said, I think that what we've answered, at least in part, is that we do want to have halflings somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we,
Mm-hmm.
I just think so because like I have never played a halfling.
mm-hmm,
I have played 4 or 5 gnomes.
mm-hmm,
So like I know that if you took gnomes out of the world, which is a character that I often like to play, and you said that, oh yeah, there are no halflings here. While you could still play it, it would um, feel different, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
that's some of the design of fifth edition or Wizards of the Coast in general is that they really like they put an emphasis on once they created race, that race needs to be across all of their worlds. That was a
Mm-hmm.
big design concept for fourth edition, and that's why like Dragonborn made their way into Eberron as an example because the design philosophy or the design emphasis said if it's a core race, it has to be everywhere, and so Dragonborn went to Eberron, and then they went to Dark Sun, and they didn't want to do it, so they didn't, and so there's a little bit of an inconsistency there, um, but yeah, so the same thing. So what you're saying has a lot of weight, Tom. Is that these core races are hard once you give them, or once people see them as a core race, it's hard to take them away, and for people to feel reasonable. That being said, um, we're introducing Genasi as a main core component of this world. So it's entirely possible that if we're going to have at least four sub races of Genasi, and we want them to feel prevalent, that we need to get rid of a race somewhere, right? Or make them not core component.
Yeah, I think we are open to pulling halflings out of the story we're telling right now,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that there's not lore of halflings somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we talk about you go to any of the big streams, you go to the chain or you go to Critical Role, which is what we know best, and or what a lot of people know best, and you talk about like Grog playing a Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Goliath are only a very small part of that world. They just happen to be seen because he was part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we can't have a halfling show up and be a NPC that is important, right?
Right.
But it just means that he's rare and exciting rather than this is a whole city of halflings.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So
Makes sense.
I don't think any of the core races. I feel I agree with your original statement that is, I don't think any of the core races should be canned just to make room for it and cut them out of the lore and everything else. What I think we should do is make the people that we don't have a reason for them to be there more scarce.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. So
Sure.
that was a weird tangent, but I was thinking about it, and
Well,
now we know
that's
something.
important. I mean,
Yeah,
if we were going to cut a halfling out, that would be good to know now, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. And we talked about gnomes last week and the week before. So gnomes were becoming a key player. So it's something to think about. Um, Anyhow, though, we've got this hamlet, we've got this area, and we know that there's some trading happening here. And I should go ahead and drop a gnome city of some sort over here, don't you think? Across the way.
on the crater.
Well, no, no, no. Just
Oh, if
north of
you
the.
refresh, you should see the gnome city up there, north of the
Perfect.
parrot town.
Perfect. I'm gonna dump it on Wonder Draft then.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I have it right by the like inlet lake area there,
Perfect. Perfect.
in Legend Keeper. Yep,
Yep.
in that area.
How big of a city do we think this gnome city is?
We also talked about these being probably forest gnomes.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe these are more like David the gnome and they live in trees?
The only thing there is how much. So I definitely am on board for them being forest gnomes. That being said, how much tech investment do they have, or technology do they have if they're only trees, right?
Do they have to? I mean, if they're, yeah. A gnome is like a tinkerer. It's not tech per se.
No, not necessarily. You're absolutely right.
Eco-sustainable tinker gnomes.
Yes.
Or like, yes, yes.
I love a good eco gnome.
Mm-hmm. Or if you still wanted tech, you could totally throw like, well, maybe you couldn't throw solar. That's too far forward. Anyway,
I love the idea of having um, a city that doesn't look like a normal city, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We talked
Yeah.
about an underwater city. We've talked about cities underground and things like that, and there's something that is just so fantasy about having a city that isn't a city, that isn't your buildings and everything else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I
Maybe
like.
they like took.
Go ahead.
Maybe they took. You know how you can weave branches of trees together when they're young, and they'll like go into lattice patterns and stuff. Maybe we could have that, except like up in the trees, kind of.
Well, that brings us back to sort of that Fae talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking that gnomes are connected to the Fae of some sort, and you told me that these gnomes are cutting spirals into the inside of trees, and they're living up in the branches, spiral staircases up into the branches. That would be quite the Fae back. I mean, that's pretty Fae for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So what kind of charts do you have here?
Oh. So I started looking. I sometimes use the charts in the books, like the core books, but I've been excited about these charts that I receive as a Patreon reward from
Awesome.
Bardic Tales. I'm not trying to like plug
Plug away.
him all the time.
Plug away. We definitely want plug it. We want to raise people up as part of this entire channel.
Yeah. So he sends out to his, well, he has a whole Instagram of just all these different random roll charts for a myriad of different things. But I have a few charts from the Patreon rewards over the past year or so, and I picked a few of them out. I didn't I didn't look at them too hard because then I would just pick my favorite instead of like rolling. um, but let's see. Do you want me to like
Let's
share a
yeah,
couple of them with you
yeah.
on?
Let's do some rolls and see if we can talk about that for the Pirate City here.
Sounds good. Oop, let's see here. So
We
this first
welcome any
pirate
of
city, there's
the viewers here too to chime in the chat and
yeah.
let us know what you're thinking for the city. We do have 4 people watching now, and um, we want to make sure that we have some of this connection with the audience as well.
For sure. Um, we could roll stuff like um, we could roll stuff like tavern names, or we could roll stuff like the magical effect that is currently on the town for some reason at the beginning of the adventure, or we could re-roll for I don't know, market stalls, bounty posters. Um,
You tell
what
us.
kind of? Okay.
We want this. We
Um.
want this. We want this city to have a Katherine twist to it. That's why we went back to the
Okay.
crater for a while last week.
Cool. So, let's see. This is a first adventure. This is gnomish heavy, or is this the Genasi heavy one? Or are Genasi heavy all over the place, and this is a
Sort of
gnomish heavy one?
this is a Genasi pirate lord, and
Yeah.
we've decided that this is a water Genasi pirate lord,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that the gnomes are sort of a neighboring kingdom that sort of work and help.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Let's roll. Ah.
David, you
Well, I
right now
am.
we're just rolling on some tables to figure out how to start building out this city.
Yep.
Hmm. Well, I like to give my players a couple of different options of like small jobs to pick up right off the bat, so
Okay,
that it's like I like to let them pick out their first quest option.
gotcha.
So I'm gonna roll on on the bounty posters one first.
Okay.
It's kind of a random start. Uh, let's see here. So this one is Saria Eonric, um, a half-elf wanted for, um, well, this one says banditry, but the one above it says wanted for freeing a condemned criminal, and that sounds more interesting, so let's put that one down.
That's cool.
And my brain is
Ooh,
already
we've got
going like 4 different places. Um,
and David is also linking a randomized city with 1 die roll too in the chat.
ooh, fancy.
Do you want to pull that up, Thomas, and
Okay.
show us what we got there, or kind of as Catherine's given her resources, we can take a peek at that one.
Yeah.
If this is a city that has a place like a library, I just rolled on random NPC generator table, and it says Dr. Stan Warwick, an archivist obsessed with elven souls, which could be pretty interesting.
Stan Warwick.
Stan Warwick, an archivist obsessed with elven souls, or if we want to tie it into the crystals, we could say obsessed with the effect of the crystals on elven spirit, or something like that.
Warwick sounds like a gnome name to me, don't you think?
I think so.
You know what? Let's do that.
Like,
Yes.
that sounds pretty cool. So he could definitely be obsessed with, like, I love the idea that there's a guy who's obsessed with what um, what happens to regular people when they die now.
Right. Yeah. It'd be super interesting.
Ooh. Okay, so David's saying you could say that he's trying uh, to create a phylactery.
Ooh.
for it.
Ooh, yeah. And maybe he's a recurring one that you just meet and he's like, oh, he's just this quirky guy with interesting ideas, and then you hear about him when you're off doing something else, and then you hear about him again, and each time it's like, oh, this is getting weird. Oh, this is getting really weird, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you come
So
back and
David also linked the D&D behind the screen there from Reddit, and it shows you how you take your piece of paper when you're building a map at home, and you roll all the dice out onto the map, and you draw the map around the
Oh yeah.
dice, and then it shows like for die value. So like a step is map your locations of interest, and then it has a chart showing you that if the die comes up with an 8 on a 20-sided die, it's a guild hall.
Mm.
If it's an 11, it's a warehouse. If it's a 15, it's like a wizard's college.
that's cool.
And then
Yeah,
it
I guess
also
I
can
was.
show you like the wealth, and that's also done with what's on the die.
That's really cool. That's a really cool way to do it. I had I had been starting with people and then building the town around the first few people that I rolled. But that's super interesting to have a, you know, 15 is this, 16 is that. Let me
Mm-hmm.
here. I will just roll. Um, I can't see the chat right now.
Hmm.
But if we is there a way for us to use that right now, or
I'm not sure. Other than me rolling or you rolling a die and us talking about that thing, it might be, and that's a great product, but it might be better for it doesn't really work to roll a bunch of dice out on stream here.
that's fair.
It works with the chart, like we could see what the next thing we are going to build, which we might do.
Right.
But let's look over your charts here first, and
Ooh,
if there's anything else that we think that we want to do, then maybe we pull up one of David's charts and we go from there.
okay.
I think we
Here's
should
another
definitely
one.
link to that in the show notes there. So I will go ahead and save that link, and when we're all done, I'll make a post with that, so anybody who wants it can go on and grab that.
So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to start a new map, and we're going to make this the town map for this
Okay.
little
Awesome.
town. Um, yep.
Um, while Zach's working on that, here's a table. I have a table here that is unusual tavern features, so I'll roll a couple
Okay,
times
cool.
on that. Yeah. Let's see, 16. Um, this this tavern offers a wide array of pickled foods, many of which you feel should definitely not be pickled. That's fun. I like that one.
Yeah, that works. That's really cool too, because it's sort of like a watery city. So maybe these pirates are used to pickling foods so they last longer on the
Yeah.
sea.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good point. Okay, let's see. Ooh, 20. Oh, weird. This tavern has a permanent silence spell cast upon it. Weird. Like, how would you explain a place like a tavern having that permanent spell on it? Like, why is it there? Like, what did someone do to ruin it for everybody else?
He says pickled tree roots. That's cool.
Ooh.
That'd be cool. Like he's saying like jerky. That was my immediate thought too. Is like it'd be some sort of jerky. I love the idea. I love the idea because that definitely implies this. I love the idea that the this little town has a lot of gnome influence, like sudden gnome influence. Like not because they wouldn't have had it for a long time. This is still in the pirate kingdom, but if like they've just let enough. He says, uh, pickled rooster feet.
Oh, gross.
Yes.
Good.
But that's what I'm.
You
That
want to have something that you can gross out your players with.
yeah.
Mhm.
I think I love the idea that there is. I think it's interesting that there's silence cast on. I think it's weird that it would be over the tavern. Like that seems like something you would pay money to have fixed quickly, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So maybe that could be a problem. Like that could be an option for their first quest or something. Um, depending on how
Ooh.
specific we want to get with it. Uh, let's see. I'll
Yeah,
roll
I mean,
one more.
okay, go ahead, roll one more, and we'll see. Let's pick one of these and sort of flesh out that tavern fully.
Yeah. Let's see. Another 10. This tavern accepts no coin, instead trading for drinks. Now that would be interesting, but of the three, I definitely want to flesh out the pickled one. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, again,
Like
Okay.
maybe, yeah.
that one sounds super interesting, and also like we think about like I think use all of these as exercises, right? Because as soon as it says no coin, it made me think, how do these pirates? What do these pirates use for currency, right?
Right.
They probably don't have their own currency. They probably use everyone else's currency, right?
Hmm.
Because being a newer state and not one that's super well organized, um, there's probably just like a lot of like, you know, lot of stamped coinage that's for kingdoms not of this one. Um,
Right.
so anyhow,
Now, do they have? Would they value a certain kingdom's currency more, or would they go strictly by the type of like metal?
who and he's saying you could also do a barter system for this area. Um,
Ooh.
I think that in my mind, barter is always king in these smaller towns, right? Because that's something useful. Um,
Yeah,
if
I
you've
mean,
got
like
the thing,
you could take this tavern that accepts no coin, and instead of accepts no coin, you could say everything in this tavern costs double than what it should for coin. And
Mm.
the real thing they're trying to do is get like IOUs, and you sort of get your tab to a high level, and then you have to go do something or scratch their back for some reason.
mm-hmm,
Right.
mm-hmm,
Like you can give me this useful thing, or you can give me twice as much gold as the useful thing is worth, kind of thing.
Yeah.
yeah. And David's saying like
Yes.
if the currency isn't if the currency doesn't have any value for the kingdom itself, like if it's all just like gold for gold, gold is gold and silver is silver, um, the further out currency could still be of interest, right? So the ones from different things could be like, oh, well, that's an interesting piece. What you got there? It's a conversation piece just as much as a coin piece.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Okay,
a good
so what do
point.
we call our pickled in?
So, I do have a table on here somewhere that is a whole bunch of different options of tavern names. They're sorted into three categories. Um, there's the this and that, uh, where it's like you roll one for what this is and one for what that is. And then there's um, the adjective noun.
David is yelling in the chat, pickled Pete's.
Pickled what? Oh
Pickled
my
pea.
Pickled
gosh.
Pete's.
We don't even need the chart. It's too good. Because then we could say Pickled Pete's Rooster Feet.
This is that sort of world. I see. Yes. That's fine.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
that
we don't.
I think that anybody who comes into Pickled Pete's, though, if they call this place PP's Tavern, they're gonna get they're gonna get trounced. It's not a place where you want to be.
It's an unfortunate occurrence that they realized too late.
Yeah,
Yes.
But by
Yes.
too late, it was night one.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Good.
David said kicked in the PP.
Oh no.
It's also
I
now
I
that kind of
agree.
yes.
I agree that I don't think all taverns in the town should have these kind of sort of funny names, but having a little bit
Right.
is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can have a couple options, so the DM can be like, "Oh, this is a serious campaign, so we're not gonna go get Pickled Pete's rooster feet."
What? That's
The
not a serious
question.
campaign for you?
Oh,
It's a
that's
serious
every
campaign for
campaign
me.
I've ever played. I don't know what you're talking about. Um, Pickled Pete's, is this a expensive place? Is this a medium, or is this a hole in the wall?
I like to think it's I like to think you walk in, and at first you just think that the whole wall is just haphazardly dug, like, uh, oh, okay. So what if this is in like the side of a hill or something? Either that, or there's just a really thick wall on one of the sides, and there's just a bunch of like a honeycomb wall, and there's just a ridiculous amount of bottles just haphazardly shoved into them, like jars and stuff,
Hmm.
where most of the pickled stuff is. Um, so then I guess maybe it's behind the bar so people don't steal it.
You know,
Um,
there is a little place in Lawrence, uh, Kansas, that is a Cajun place,
mm-hmm.
and there is a wall like out in front of everyone, but not behind the bar, where you can where they have like 50 different hot sauces. So you
Oh
get
my
your
gosh.
food and then you go grab like a hot sauce off the wall, or two or three or four, and you take that to your table, right? I love the idea that like, and you've seen like at Mediterranean places or whatnot, they have all that pickled uh, gosh, it's like basically a palate cleanser, but it's like all this like pickled beets
Cabbage?
and, well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's all sorts of pickled stuff
Mm.
um out on a bar area. So I love the idea that like there is like all these jars that you can go pick up off a shelf somewhere. And
Yeah.
I was
I
looking for the names of the different tiers of society in the player's handbook for fifth edition. I couldn't find it, but oh, here it is: lifestyle expenses. And they have, is this a wretched tavern, squalid, poor, modest, comfortable, wealthy, or aristocratic? Is the way they break them down.
what's the
I
lowest
want to
three?
say
Wretched, squalid, and poor.
I was I was gonna go somewhere between poor and modest.
Okay.
A
I'm
little bit more toward modest.
Which makes
But
sense,
if
right? That actually makes sense because a he's saying ginger. That's always good with your pickled. Um,
I
the
think he was talking to you about the Mediterranean
oh,
pickled items.
yes, yes.
mm,
Um, but the idea, right, that this basically this pirate lord and this little town next to it are right on the border, and really the only towns that are trading with this larger continent. So they would be of slightly more wealth than the average town, probably.
Especially the average pirate town.
Yes.
makes sense.
This is probably not the only tavern in town either. So if you
Right.
have a modest tavern or a comfortable tavern, it doesn't mean that there's also not a squalid tavern.
Fair.
Right. Yeah. And
Probably quite a few squalid taverns around here, right?
Yeah.
is Pickled Pete's the chain restaurant, and there's like a squalid one that's like the local dive?
Oh my gosh. I
Pickled.
like
So
this idea.
so every different pirate town or some of the different pirate towns all have franchises of pickled Pete's. Is what you're telling me?
I was more thinking gnomes, right? Like
Oh,
like this is a gnome thing. And this is like their
oh,
first thing to branch out into the world of genasi and humans and all that, right?
so
Of
as
all
they
the
go
things
through,
to make it through first.
Yes.
so, so maybe that these pickled Pete's ends up in different places in the world.
Mm-hmm. Especially
Could.
like right next to gnome things, right?
Yeah,
Like where
Yeah,
there's gnomes,
yeah,
there's a Pickled Pete's. Um,
yeah.
And Pickle Pete might have been like the great great grandfather, and these are all like a family chain.
Yeah.
Nice. That's fun.
Well, if this was Eberron, it would be every single one of the workers is Pickled Pete, right? Because
Yes.
they could be changelings. Um,
Oh my gosh.
it would be delightful, but it's not Eberron. Um, that being said, it would be so awesome if, like, okay, how, yes, okay, I'm 100% sold on David's suggestion for the dive bar, but also, um, I love the idea that this is like 100% like a chain restaurant, like with a theme, right? So it's already that. It's already both of those things. So like the owner of each chain calls themselves Pickled Pete. I
Oh
feel
gosh.
like that's
It's a title.
it's yes, it's an assumed name. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
All I'm
Good.
thinking
He
about
said
This
now,
is this is a good.
and he said or David has said a squalid bar called the Moth Light because it draws drinkers like
Ooh.
moths to a flame.
Uh.
I like that. I'm sold.
Good.
Yes, like the
Yes.
Dread Pirates. Yes. All I can think
So.
about is the Office episode now where Michael Scott gets the list of names of people to gals to call, and Kevin gives him Wendy's, right? That he,
Oh
uh,
no.
that's never mind.
The Office is the best.
Yes. Anyhow, carry on.
So do we want to? Do we want another tavern name, or do we want to hop over to a different like area of the town?
Well,
Like a different building.
I think we need to. We have Pickled Pete's as a gnome tavern. Has
Mm-hmm.
been gnome families open these across the country. Sort of a more modest lifestyle inside. Um, it's a couple. We have a couple pickled foods. We have pickled jerky, pickled rooster feet. Um, what what is exciting here? What does it look like on the inside? We have you said like a honeycomb backing, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have anything that might start up or any important people here? Do you learn more about the gnomish race here?
Mm.
I like
I
that.
think that's a yeah, that's a good one.
I think there's also a game, not a game, but like there's a couple times that I've done taste tests for my players, right,
Mm-hmm.
where they'll go to a beer, like a tavern, and they'll have like a beer taste test. Or I once had a fairy dragon jerky that
Oh
they
gosh.
that they could try, right? But
Nice.
I love the idea that there's probably like, if we're building this out for a D&D game, I would definitely put like, maybe there's some weirder pickled options that have some weird
Mm-hmm.
effects or whatnot, because your players will spend the whole night there at that point figuring out what they can contrive.
We need a hot wings challenge.
Mm,
We need like something. How if you could eat this many, you
A food challenge?
yeah.
Just a bunch of pickled eggs to see how many people can eat the most pickled eggs?
probably.
like yeah, but we gotta do like.
That
What
would
would
be
be a
pretty
really
cool.
weird?
David just said if this is a gnome bar, gnomes are getting more familiar with the world, and they bring sort of these fey gnomish drinks that most people would find odd but have small magical effects.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you could even just roll on a wild magic table, but like scale it down a lot if it's a huge effect.
And David has linked tavern drinks.
Mm-hmm. That's a D&D
Hey.
Speak, which is a great, really good site for this sort of thing.
I am collecting all these links, David, and I'm going to send these out into the world. Yeah, Thomas
Where
would
are
accept
my?
that challenge. I would probably drink those things until I exploded.
I'm gonna roll really
For sure.
fast on the D20, the barkeep generator.
Go for
Awesome. We
Just
like
to see
that.
what we've got. Let's see,
We
got
do
an
know
8.
that the barkeep is going to be a gnome.
Right, but maybe it could be,
We can-
like, you could take the cork from it or something.
it. Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Except for this one, because I rolled a Kenku who serves all drinks in beak-friendly bowls. So that one doesn't
Yeah,
quite work.
That's probably not the best for this situation, but that is sort of an awesome idea.
Yeah. Well, skipping the Elven Wizard.
That works
who
great, he
runs-
says.
Huh?
David said that works great, the Kenku bowls.
The this barkeep runs the tavern via homunculus. I've never been able to pronounce that word right. That could be interesting.
You can just look up and down the chart too and tell us what kind of quirks Pickled Pete might have.
Yeah.
Maybe all the Pickled Pete's wear an eye patch even though their eyes are good. Just leaning into the pirate one. So we have gnomes have these drinks that give light magical essences. So these magical essences, while Catherine's sort of looking up and down the charts, these essences are probably things like your toes glow or something like that. Am I thinking the right way, Zach?
Yeah, you know, you want ones. You have to have some sort of risk. At least that's in my mind, right? Like some of the things are just silly, and some of the things are like, ooh, that's kind of fun, and then some of the things are like, I should not have done that, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like Catherine was talking about the wild magic table. And my favorite one on the wild magic table is when you are a sorcerer and you can't speak, so everything that comes out is bubbles for a full minute.
Yes.
So I also like that you cast polymorph on yourself. You automatically fail the saving throw and you turn into a sheep for the spell's duration. So that's a great way to introduce something like that, is that your characters are sitting at this inn or this bar, and then all of a sudden a sheep pops up on top of the bar, and you're like, what just happened? And you see it walk away, and somebody smacks the sheep, and it turns back into a gnome or back into whatever.
Good.
Yes.
I am not finding anything for this specific tavern in that specific table. The focused in piratey sort of aspect. I like the eye patch thing. I have a horse in my world who has a huge collection of extravagantly unique and expensive eye patches. But if it was a gnomish, maybe we could do something like each one of those patches has a slightly different effect.
Jay and John's in chat is saying that maybe it's a magical eye patch.
Yeah.
So I think you and him are on the same path there.
Sweet.
The other option is that just this Pickled Pete has a eye patch. Maybe the other ones are that more go into that area where they are fitting in more with the other races of the area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this Pickled Pete is close to a dwarven settlement, maybe the Pickled Pete is more rough and tumble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. mean, if we're establishing that like this is a like you're in a pirate kingdom, things are a little chaotic here. Like I think it
Hmm.
would be important to have um, more of a focus on the rough and tumble, at least for most of the NPCs for this first few places you're going.
Hmm.
I think.
For sure.
Um, I was scrolling to look at the general NPC quirks, and I didn't get to that one, but I found a local law generator, and it made me think like, in a pirate kingdom, how does that work specifically? Like, there's got to be some kind of code,
Yeah,
but
it's one of those things, right, where like this is a pirate kingdom that's trying to go legit.
mm-hmm.
So, but it's a new thing, right, for all of them. So it's probably like there's a law, and some people really try to uphold the law, and some people say screw it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at least that's how I would imagine it.
Yeah, I think we talked about this city on Saturday. Also, David said it's sort of like early Venice, and we actually talked about sort of putting this as a water genasi lord or an Undine lord, and we talked about maybe putting rivers through the city as well, right?
Mm.
Oh yeah,
Should
yeah,
we make the
definitely.
whole thing? Can we make the whole thing like a big waterfall? Is that too extreme? Or maybe we can slant it so that it's like not like a steep waterfall, but it's like a river with several different like split offs tributaries, and like the town is just like in between in sections,
So there's
kind of
two
a thing.
towns, right, that we're talking about. There's the
Mhm.
major
Mhm.
town, and then there's this small little hamlet. Um, so the major town, I think, is absolutely that, where there's like water crisscrossing through the streets, and um, I think that that's exactly right. And then there's an underwater portion as well. Um,
Yeah.
I also like the simplicity of what David said for the. I think that resonates with me. The simplicity of what David said for the drinking or the pickled stuff, where like you just roll a 100, and on a lot of instances nothing really crazy is going to happen except you something ridiculous. But every once in a while,
Mhm.
something crazy might happen, like you belch fire.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and I think we can settle that as easy as a D100 chart, and
Mm.
like we break it down into sections of 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for 1 through 10, it's something pretty mundane. You feel a tickle in your feet for a while or something. Um,
Sweet.
from 10 through 20, you felt bubbles or something, and you can't speak.
Mm-hmm.
From 20 to 30, it's blah, 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 blah. And we get all the way up to, let's say, 90 or 95. And then you start putting them out. Each one is one. And those are the big surprises.
Yeah.
And what that does is it lets your DMs have something fun happen with these magical drinks without having to go and figure it all out themselves. But it also isn't a wild magic chart, which takes up a whole page.
Right.
That's fair.
Um,
So I've been reading through the. Oh, yes.
Jan Johns was saying in the chat, going with Catherine's idea, maybe the town is on different levels depending on where you are in society.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
maybe, I mean, maybe not physical levels, but maybe these rivers are breaking up the different parts of society,
Mhm.
because we are pretty close to the ocean, so it'd be hard to do a lot of raised unless it was man raised. By
Right.
man, I
Which.
mean by by uh, by townspeople raised up physically by
Right.
boulders or by brick and mortar. But
Which
maybe
maybe they
there
did.
is. Go ahead.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Which maybe they did for the, I don't know, the top tier people. Um, like, I don't know, overseer, official
Hmm.
people that would go report to like higher ups in like regional higher up, and then the their designated pirate lord kind of a thing.
We also talked about having maybe having like the king's castle out to sea a little bit,
Mm.
because Undine or Water Genasi are amphibious.
Mhm.
So maybe there's a way to get out there by boat, but we have Undine or Genasi like patrolling under the ocean floor.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we talked about if evil boats were coming in, the patrolling could just sort of harpoon through the bottom of a boat, and it's like a guard to stopping people getting to their lord.
Mhm. Nice.
Right, right,
So
Zach.
Yep, yep. That's exactly right. Like, there's like they're going to take advantage of whatever um, benefits they have to get a leg up on any invaders, and so having a lot of your troops being able to be in underneath the ocean and not easily recognized by incoming vessels makes it basically as treacherous as a reef, right? It's not something that you want to just go into without a whole lot of preparation and knowledge. So that's at least my understanding of the situation.
I wonder if gnomes would. I wonder if there's some sort of exchange or trade or something to maybe enhance some of those weapons. Like if you're harpooning a ship, maybe it also uh, messes up X amount, like I don't know, a D6 or something, of the hole around the area that it punctures or something like that, and it's something that the gnomes kind of added on to a harpoon
Hmm.
or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should definitely figure out some reason why the gnomes are helping guard this castle. I think, or
Mm.
this area.
Mhm.
We did talk about maybe the gnomes are making small like submarines out of barrels and things like that. And
Yeah.
we talked about this because if you're familiar with the DMG and the magic items, they have something called I think it's like the Call of Kawashi or Kawalsh, and it is basically a two-man submarine for in um, in Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe that these gnomes are going back and forth in their own equipment, and it's called the Apparatus of Kawalsh, and it's basically a small.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a small crab submarine barrel,
It's
and
kind of cute.
yeah, and it can go up and down by letting water in and out. It's basically a tiny submarine.
Mhm.
So David says they've been
Sweet.
convinced there is a holy relic here specific to gnome lore. They aren't supposed to lay eyes on it, like the Ark of the Covenant, but they are being tricked into watching over this palace.
Or maybe there's actually a like chiclet crystal thing there.
So there, that's
I
the.
love the. Oh, go ahead, Zach.
I was gonna say I think yes and yes. Like to me, anything that we can do to build that tension or that thing that where the party can decide that they want to upset balance or whatnot. Like already to me, that's what I want to write about. As soon as those two things were said at the same time, I'm like, that's what I'm gonna write about, maybe. um, because there's this idea, right, that the gnomes think this city has something important. Um, yes, and yeah, David's saying it's not actually there. I think that's the key, right? Is that they think that there's something there, and they think that the Genasi are the caretakers. But really, the Genasi, what it really probably is, or what they glimpsed, or what the Genasi have led them to believe is what they think it is probably that chiclet, or a trove of chiclets, or a big shard of chiclet, or whatever. Um, because one of the things that we want to do, if this is a starting zone, right, we want to communicate the theme of the world. And even though we're hundreds of miles away from the crater, having a horde of chiclets or something like that as a focal point for this area is really is a really great way to communicate that. So, and maybe, yeah, he's talking about oh goodness, the dark crystal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We also want to introduce, as you said, just to go a little bit further into it, for anybody who haven't seen last week's, where we really went into sort of these gems or these crystals or this stuff that it makes up these chiclets from the crater. It's sort of this like magical currency in the world to help with the pantheon. And we sort of want to, that's sort of the overarching idea of this entire place. So if this is where your characters are going to start, they should start getting their first feeling of this as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sweet.
So
I think.
so now,
Can we
oh, go ahead.
sit on that for a second though? Because I think that
Yeah.
to me, like figuring out how this misunderstanding happened would be a really
Mm-hmm.
cool thing to it would really communicate something to us about the pirate lord, right? Because if it was something that he did intentionally, right, then we know something about him, which is he's manipulative but also really smart, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's something that he did on accident, that communicates something else, and also we'll learn something about the gnomes too. So, like, all of this, is this something that the average person knows? Like that there's been this manipulation, or did um, um,
I
oh yeah, he's saying
I
totally did it intentionally.
I think intentionally is correct, but I think that the average person does not know this at all.
Because then
Mm-hmm.
we get back to the dragon who's trying to manage everything.
That's definitely true.
It's also the fact that if they are, I think that they are, it might be that he started this intentionally to get some sort of trading done,
Mm,
but the big reason why he's kept it up is because they've sort of merged into the city and they're sort of copacetic at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and David's right. A smart villain is a scary villain. Uncovering the truth would be amazing. And I think that's right. I think we have a quest chain here in this town, and I think that part of that is a great idea to figuring out um, how to at least liberate the lore here.
mm-hmm.
Well, and there's a question,
Right.
right, of like if the gnomes are happy working right now, do
Mm-hmm.
you if we can maintain that at least somewhat, then I think then the question becomes, right, is it then there's a question of, do you want to upset things? If things aren't already
Yeah.
upset, is it worth causing a ruckus to get the truth out, right?
Yeah.
um,
I like that. Yeah.
yes, and he's saying that the pirate lord is trying to use, in a different way, other pirate lords are using the dragon as their own backup bodyguard threat, right? But he's saying they are this dragon, these pirates are using the dragon as a hey, it's us against it sort of a scenario, right? Like it's going to be our secret, which I think does add to it, right? Even if because you don't want the gnomes to be stupid, but
Right.
if they think that there's a
This,
legitimate threat, then they might have to just put up with it, even if they have their suspicions.
the other option too is a double cross, right? So our pirate king has this thing he's holding over the gnomes, because he thinks that the gnomes want this item. And sometime over the last X amount of years, at least the higher ups in the gnome kingdom have come to believe that either this was there and it's gone, or it was never there. And they are keeping, because they are better off being part of civilization and learning tech and learning tinkering and everything else than just in their trees. So they are continuing to like feed the ego of the pirate king. Because it would be cool for your players to find this out and then take it back to the gnome kingdom and say, I'm sorry to tell you this, sir, but this is what's going on. And he's like, oh yeah, I knew that, but they give us so much protection because and gold and gems and whatever it is, because we are trading partners. So I keep telling my people that they have to go search for this thing.
Ooh, I like the idea that like, see, but so that again, that communicates something, right? It communicates that the gnomes are just as corrupt at the higher level as the pirate king or the pirate lord, right?
But do they have to be corrupt, right? Because the gnome is doing it. The pirate king definitely has corrupt intentions, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wants it because it's better for him that is using the gnome army.
Mm-hmm.
But the gnomes are living a better lifestyle, so the king said, well, we can go back to fighting with the pirates, or we can send 3 people in the submarine every day to look for this thing, and we can continue having our people in the city and bringing back goods and whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because if you told me that, let's say, I mean, again, we're bringing up slave labor at this point, but if we tell you that I had to send one of my kids to go work every single day, but in the long run they'd come out with college, then I mean, yeah, it's the same kind of thing, right? Well, they'd be better off in the long run, but we're asking them to do something for us. I guess it's not a great example, but
well, I mean, I can see it because it's like, people are going to be like, why are we wasting time doing this? And then, but then looking at the bigger picture, it's like, well, it's because our society is not being attacked by, yeah, I can see it. It makes sense.
And David's saying this situation allows the pirate king to play off both sides, right? He has options. If the gnomes rise up, he can actually bring the dragon to bear if there's a war. If the dragon comes a calling and wants the king to do something that he doesn't want to do, that plays right into the presentation that he's already giving, right? Which is, and that could even like, even though the gnome king or the gnome leaders might suspect that there's no relic, if the dragon shows up to take something or to correct things, that's still evidence that like it's still something, and it's still like, okay, well, maybe there's not a relic, or maybe there is, but what we do know is that the pirate lord said that the dragon was going to be a problem, and it's a problem, so he was at least telling us the truth there, right?
That's fair.
I just think I think of that episode of Friends, and you guys might be a little young to be watching Friends, but I think of that episode of Friends where where Chandler hits on Phoebe, and they go back and forth, and they're not really hitting on it, but they're trying to hide a relationship. And so he starts hitting on Phoebe. Phoebe realizes that it's all to hide the fact that he's dating Monica. Phoebe goes and hits back on Chandler. Chandler's like, okay, what's going on? And they go, and it gets bigger and bigger. And it's one of those things where the Pirate King is hiding the fact that there is no thing, but as long as the gnomes think there's a thing, they'll continue helping him. The Gnome King is hiding the fact that he knows that they know that there is no thing. And it's just sort of going back and forth. to the benefit of their kingdoms.
And to the detriment of, you know, the common folk to some extent, right? Like
Yeah, I mean,
is there any downside to this, or is it all just kind of working for now? Is I guess what I'm asking.
I
it's
would
working for now.
argue I would argue that the that them not fighting is actually a plus for a lot of the common folk. I would argue that if the truth came out, it would get really rough for them. And if we wanted to play into morally gray on both sides, we could say that this Pirate King, yeah, he's doing a lot of shady stuff, but he also legitimately doesn't want himself and the people he's kind of like overseeing to go back into that conflict as well. So I don't know. I'd say it was more of a. Go ahead.
You could put it on your players too, right? So you could say, once you find this out about the Pirate King, you either approach the Pirate King or the Gnome King with it, or Queen or Lord or whatever it may be, and then the players have to decide whether or not to tell the soldiers or the whoever it is that is doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
Because while nothing bad is happening to the soldiers and they're pretty happy with their job, they probably are not happy that they've been working for however many years doing the exact same thing that is really nothing.
Mm, mm-hmm.
So you have that morally gray area on your players rather than on the people on the lords.
Nice.
Yes.
If the players are forcing the thing and going to make it known that I think you're right, Zach. I think they're both morally gray. And if the players are like, okay, everybody seems to be benefiting here, we're going to walk away, it makes your players morally gray. I agree, David. I love presenting players with a morally gray area. If the players want to be good, they will just tell somebody and make it known. And then see where it sorts out from there and see if they can help or not.
Mm-hmm.
I was just playing last week. I was playing in a home game with Tyler, a friend of ours, and he threw at us a band of thieves that had a problem that we were trying to solve. And that band of thieves, I walked in and I said, "Why should we help you? Like, nothing is wrong with us at the moment. I mean, we're literally if you wanna attack us, that's fine, but we're going to slaughter everybody here. We are trying to solve this problem for the innocent people in town. We don't really care about you." And all my party members were like, "Well, wait a minute, we have to be diplomatic here because we don't want them to attack." And I said, "Well, they're all bad people. My character wouldn't deal with bad people."
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we got to paint our characters in.
Mm-hmm.
So as David said, he likes adding good and bad things to make both sides really murky. And you make the players, and there's a couple different ways you could go with it, especially if you make this into part of that adventure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to start an adventure in this area, and part of that might be that there's sort of this thought of that somebody's being used.
Yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
and to not get too deep into what we know about the other adventure that we're putting together for this world, the other starting adventure, but like the other thing I like is that this adventure is very different, right,
Mm-hmm.
David? Yep. So um, when everything comes to fruition, you're gonna have two vastly different options to take your players on for different tables, different play styles. So that's always
Speaking of
nice.
different playstyles, I do want to throw out. Um, I really enjoy morally gray stuff, but I don't enjoy it getting so gray that I can't tell anymore, even like on anything. So like I would, if I was designing this encounter, I would want there to be like, you know, maybe not somebody is just in the wrong or just in the right, but like I would want there to be like
The bad
they're
guy as
both
well.
equally terrible and whatever we do, it's not going to be a great solution. Like I like to feel like I'm doing something constructive by the
So
end of the adventure, if that makes sense.
yeah, so what I think about there is you have to give at least NPCs somewhere along the line that they actually care about, right? If everybody that they meet is a gray, murky character that they can't fully get on board with, then at the end of the day, they're like, why, right? But the minute you give them somebody that they're like, no, this guy is why, right?
Yeah.
Or this gal, this is a person that we care about, and they're on this side of the fight or whatever. Then that's something that they can put all of their. I mean, they can pick their own. They can pick their own justifications too. So never assume that your party isn't going to decide that something's important that you didn't care about, right? Um, but yeah, David's saying if it's always gray, it's emotionally draining. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
There's
also. Go ahead. Go ahead.
there's also the fact that if if you always have emotionally gray people or gray people, then when you want to turn somebody on your party, it doesn't feel like a backstab. So you got to have good people to trick the players into feeling like this whole town is good. So when they trust somebody at some point and there's a 180 turn, that it doesn't feel like, oh yeah, that makes sense because Tom does nothing but paint gray people. So there's also that, in my opinion.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep. My
For sure.
I'll come clean a little bit here, since there's not that many people in our stream right now, which is just fine. um, I did that. I made that exact mistake in my current campaign, where everybody that the party came into was morally ambiguous or potentially going to backstab them. And now I have a party that doesn't trust anyone.
Which is
Right?
good, but you also lose some of that excitement of this person is great, this person is great, this person is great. Oh my gosh, what just happened to us? We're devastated.
Right. And also it's draining. Like David said, it's like, oh, because they've even said, like, I wish we could just trust someone. Right? Which is kind of what I wanted in a sense, right? Where they didn't just blindly trust every single NPC that said, hey, I'll help you. That there's always a motivation behind people's offering, or by and large there is. But it became such that it just, they needed, what they said is, we need people that we can trust to come, that we can ask help for, that it can't just all be on our shoulders all the time. And that is a very reasonable thing, right? And it's a perfect thing that you want in your campaigns and your adventures. You want your players to have allies and resources. So
Is this the
And
wacky
David
pack?
it is.
and
Oh.
David is saying that he likes to keep it to 2 or 3 people that are gray in a town. Then everybody else is a bit clearer on who they should and shouldn't trust to some degree.
Interesting.
So there's a
That
couple
sounds cool.
people that you're like, I don't know about him. And then you either know that person's not good or that person seems to be good.
Right.
Um,
So
uh,
we have a gnomes are working with Pirate King. We have we've sort of fleshed out the idea, the look of the town. What other parts of the town do we want to talk about? We've got probably about another 15 minutes. Do we say we want to move on till about 11 o'clock tonight, or do we stop around now?
let's see, it's 10:30 on my end right now. Let's find a nice spot to stop in about the next 15 minutes, sometime in there when we find a good spot.
Great.
So
we've got some bounties, so we've got some quest chains started up.
we've got the taverns. I would like to know. So I painted this in here, and we can take it out. But I've got this little tower here because I felt like they needed something to kind of keep their eye on. Yes. So guild. So I'm wondering, is this a guild tower or a guild hall, or is it a Is it an outpost station of, you know, what works for a military with the pirates? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of options there, but who would this pirate lord have assigned to keep an eye on this town?
Who would the pirate lord have to assign to keep an eye on the gnome village?
This is just a that this town right. Let's see, I can't really ping it, but I'll zoom in. It's
Yeah.
this town right here. I'll kind of make it.
What about somebody who could scry?
So like a wizard.
Like, yeah.
What if there was a wizard guild that was like that had instead of a lighthouse, it was like a scrying eye, almost like the Eye of Sauron. But you could look into this eye, and depending on where you stood at the top of this tower, you could like far see almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this town
That's
isn't.
cool.
So as I've been painting it, learned a couple things, right? First off, this town is not fortified heavily. We can change that, but right now it's not. But what it has going for it is that there's no easy docking area here, right? There's strips of land. It's probably very shallow water, so big boats are not getting to this town. And then it's got forest kind of hemming it off a little bit, and then it's got some ridges. So all of these things, Skryland, stop. That's David.
What? I can't see the chat. What did he say?
He says, "Don't get close to Skryland, SER Island. It'll be watching.
It'll be watching you."
Yes.
Good job.
But what we know, I guess, is that like this town, like a wizard would be really great in my mind because it's certainly not like a army would feel like they needed to put walls up or whatnot. If there was a whole bunch of men stationed there, they would start getting busy doing stuff like that. But if it's a wizard, and I love the idea that even though it's even though it's not a huge town, it is in a big area, like right on this river channel that divides the borders of the two kingdoms, right? So it's strategically placed, even though it's not a defensible area with like a fort. So a wizard makes sense because if you're not going to keep things back with walls, you keep them back with magic.
What do you guys think about like the far-seeing eye?
I
do like that.
I'm wondering if is there really an eye on the top of the tower? Is that what we're thinking? Oh,
I don't know if there's really an eye or not, but I'm thinking that like instead if you picture a lighthouse and there's that light that revolves in the top and there's this open area normally. What if you had like instead of where the light goes in the lighthouse, you had this orb, and the wizard goes up and looks through the orb, and he can sort of look down that border area and check also anybody coming into the pirate island.
And David's saying, what about it's the library guy from earlier? And I think that could be really that's a good tie, right? That
I've missed the library guy. I'm confused on what we're saying here.
that's the Warwick, is that his name? From the very beginning.
Warwick.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Stan Warwick, the alchemist.
Yes, I like that. That's cool.
So is Stan Warwick a bad guy then? I know he's on this bounty board, but does that mean he's bad?
Maybe we need if we pick him as Stan Warwick. So is
maybe
we maybe take him off the bounty board if he
so,
the wizard.
So we're talking about the one who's talking about crafting a phylactery for bringing back a soul. Let me scroll back here and find all the names.
Yeah, if you reset Legend Keeper,
Oh, refresh.
I have Stan Warwick and Ciara Aaron or Ciara Eon Rich, and that was for freeing a condemned criminal. So Stan Warwick is the one that's obsessed with the crystals effects on like gnomish or elvish souls.
And where is that one? Where's that pin in?
Under the Undine Pirate King,
Okay, perfect.
and it's about halfway down. It's under the tab or under the area for bounties.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So maybe we drop Stan Warwick off the bounty board, and we just make him the guy in the tower, and then we can still have Saria Aeonrich as the banditry person.
David is saying he's working with a pirate lord because the pirate lord saved him from a bad thing in a different pirate city. Stan is making the elven soul thing, but in private. Even the pirate king isn't aware of Stan's true intentions.
Nice.
And if he's a gnome, he might inadvertently set off this whole shebang, right? Because if he does something that breaks this game of
Trust.
pretend that everybody's doing, right, then he could upset this pleasant ride everybody's choosing to take. I think we have gotten quite a bit of the, and he's saying, yeah, maybe, wow, yep, you just keep weaving these points back and forth. If Stan wants the chiclet that the pirate lord has for research purposes, now we just, we know a lot about this, what sort of adventure this place is going to have at this point, right? It's an intrigue-based adventure.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think that the reason that the party is important is they're going to find something out about Stan, right? Which is going to kind of...
Maybe somebody's in the inn looking for Stan for one of the other pirate kingdoms. So they're asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, and you could even have this guy asking question, and all of a sudden the inn goes silent.
Yes.
Because Stan is sort of paying attention to the city.
Yeah, and David's saying they get to find out stuff about a lot of people. So yeah, it's not just going to be yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Ooh, and he's okay. Yeah, there's a lot more of a reason for silent spells to go off in the town if there's a wizard that's running the town, right? So cool.
Sweet.
So let's cap this sucker off with what do we want to do? Where are we want to continue this line of thought for next week? Is that kind of our idea? Is we kind of built this out, we know a little bit, but keep going right here in these three, like the hamlet, the water city, and the gnome city, and just try to create those in more depth next week?
Yeah, I think the first part of I think the session went pretty well today, right? Where we had half of the session was sort of building different points of interest in the city, and half of the session was sort of going into depths of why things are there.
Yeah.
And so we're not only are we building the city, but we're also building directly into sort of these plot points of why your characters are excited to be here.
Yep. Yep. I mean, anytime we sit down and we get to build a chunk of this map, and we get to create some world lore, but we also hit upon the adventure path, it's a success, because we've
for sure
we've created strings of 3 products. So now Thomas and I will work on this week is crafting out what that adventure might look like. And so we're going to, the world building is still going to be up to the world building stream, but you guys have given us a ton of information to take back and say, here's what this adventure looks like in this world. So it's Pretty
And
cool.
part of that is, and part of the reason we're going to do it that way is that we really want, when this product releases, we want people who have been on our stream over and over again to be able to get excitement from either playing or running this stream as well, or running this world as well.
Yep.
So
yeah, I'm definitely going to be running this stuff.
so we are
Sweet.
excited to make that happen.
Yeah.
I think this is a pretty good place to move along for now.
I think so. I think so.
I do think that I am going to make a post here, and thank you very much, Katherine, for being here. But I'm going to post. You said it's the charts are from the Bardic.
Yeah, Bardic Tales Instagram. Some of them are from his like Instagram page, and some of them are Patreon rewards.
Okay. Great. I will link those, because again, one of the whole reasons why Nick and I made this channel was to help bring other creators in as well.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So I will link that out, and hopefully that he'll see this and he can come check it out as well.
And D&D Speak, one of the things that David posted was D&D Speak, which I'll just give a shout out that they've got stuff on the DMs Guild and all that too, so you can snag a whole bunch of their stuff.
Awesome. And I am going to tag those as well. I saved those links from chat, so I can put those in the same post. Sweet. And anytime we do this kind of thing, I think I'm going to do a wrap up message like that, and sort of give some of that credit as due. So if you want to bring anything in, if anybody here is listening, if anybody wants to bring in any of their product from the from anywhere, DMs Guild, Patreon, Instagram, whatever it may be, and it makes sense, and you link it in the chat, I'm happy to push that also.
Yep.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Sounds
Thanks for
good.
having me on, guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks you for being
coming.
here. What I would say is that we need to figure out some other things here in this town, and while inns are the most important probably for any adventure party, we also need some other things. So we have this wizard tower. Do we have a wizard school? And he's just the top part of this tower. These are all things we should start thinking about for next week.
Yep. Sounds good. Well, guys, I think that's about it. So keep an eye out. So the next thing we'll do is probably a stream this weekend of world building. Yeah, so we're gonna do some world building probably this weekend again, and then next Monday you'll get to tune in to Dungeon on Mondays at the same time, and then again on Tuesday at the same time. So we'll have a lot going on in the next week if you want to check it out.
I know you can't see it, Katherine, but David just said in the chat, "Love seeing you on here as a guest. You have a lot of great ideas."
Oh, thank you.
So
do you.
Yeah. The whole chat is pink with David's name, so it's always a good thing.
Yes.
But everyone have a great week. Probably look out for us again for an impromptu on Saturday or Sunday, and then we're gonna move right into Dungeon on Monday and back into Ascension on Tuesday.
Yep. We'll see you guys later.
Bye, guys.